Good morning, Lowestoft. This is Esther checking in on behalf of the Lowestoft Town Centre Chaplaincy team. It's Wednesday and we're here for our 10:30-ish little chat and explore and ponder and all that goes with that. How are you this morning? If you're listening, let us know. Let us know how it's going. It's a bit grey, it's a bit miserable. We're all on the slow today in our house, all a little bit behind. But we're here and we're bringing you a thought for the day. And I called this one, the one where I hate you. The one where I hate you. I don't hate you, just have to say. But I've just been thinking this week about all the ways that we're responding to the craziness of the situation that we're in. And there's so much emotion going around, isn't it? I just wonder how you feel at the minute, whether you feel okay, whether you feel stressed, like how is it going? And I've called it the one where I hate you, because I just think there's loads of extreme emotion going around at the minute, and hate is one of those ones, isn't it? Like anger and fury and rage is such a big emotion, all encompassing, and it hides so much, doesn't it? It hides, like it's a mask for just disappointment and hurt and pain and rejection and disillusionment and feeling let down and all of those things. And when we're angry and when we're cross, normally we are just hiding some of that pain, some of the ways we just feel like, you know, we've been treated badly. The world hasn't treated us how we think it should. So that's sort of what I want to ponder on today. And I guess on the one hand, we're living through this pandemic, like we've spent 10 weeks in lockdown and maybe we're isolated or we're working in crazy situations. We know that just in the UK alone, nearly 50,000 people have died, which is just mind-blowing, really, isn't it? Maybe including some of the people that you know or that you know of. And at the same time, we've witnessed a sort of a resurgence of a voice standing up against racism, haven't we? We've got all these peaceful protests going on worldwide, but we've also got people hijacking them and causing riots. There's loads that's being said against the police. We're pulling down slave trader statues in Bristol, talking about changing street names, and there's a recognition of the absence of Black history taught in our schools. And then on top of that, like Brexit is still happening and new trade agreements are being made and the government is doing what the government does. And you know what? I just feel like as a country, we're cross. We're cross with Boris. We are cross with Dominic Cummings. We are cross that we can't see our friends. We are cross at the death tolls. We are cross with the police. We're cross with racists. We're confused about whether to be cross about something. Should we be cross about statues being ripped down or should we not? And that's all like the big stuff, isn't it? That's like the national stuff. And I just think it impacts on the crossness just within ourselves, you know, like we cross with each other and cross with the friends that don't contact us and cross with the comment on the news feed, cross with the response to the TikTok video, cross with ourselves for not coping or not responding or not looking better or not understanding more. And it's just so easy, isn't it, for that crossness to like infiltrate into like irritation and a lack of empathy and self-involvement and that sort of sense of just crowd mentality, just like following the crowd. And if we're not careful, we just end up hating everyone and just making sweeping statements about everything. Like we hate the government and we hate the police and we hate anyone who sees the world differently to me. And I'm just like, I'm sorry, is that really what life is all about? Yes, of course, we need to stand up against what is wrong. Like, racism is wrong. We need to stand up against it. It's good that it's back in our national like psyche that it's not okay. We need to say that, no doubt about it, obviously. But like, is tarring everybody with the same brush what that's about? Like, are all police racist? No. Are all people either good or bad? Like, no. We're all both, aren't we? Like, aren't you aware of your own demons, of like how you're both good, how you're prone to love and to care, and you're prone to great compassion, and you're able to create beauty and express such love to other people, but you're also like properly intolerant and selfish and prone to cynicism and destructive behaviour. Like you have a distinct lack of empathy sometimes, a tendency to follow those with the loudest voices. Like, I'm sorry if you don't see your flaws. I think we said in a few of these thoughts a few days ago, like, you deceive yourself. Like, we're all in this. We're all flawed people, capable of such beauty, but also such destructiveness. It's like if you want to start writing people off because of some action or viewpoint that you think is below standard, then I guess you have to start by writing yourself off too, you know? It's like, because best you get on Instagram Live or Facebook Live and admit your flaws. Like, don't use a filter and declare that you are damaged and broken, because if you're going to write other people off, it's like we need to start with ourselves, don't we? And I don't think we're very good at that as a country. We're not very good at looking at ourselves. We're good at looking at other people. And I think part of that is, like, I know for me, it's like we love to take an extreme position, don't we? It's just so easy and safe to stand in an extreme. Like, we know where we are. The ground's really solid there, isn't it? Like, racist people are evil. The police are brutal. The government are idiots. People who comment like that on my newsfeed are a waste of space. People who don't see the world like I do are idiots. Like, that's a really safe place to stand in, isn't it? Like, people who don't respond to lockdown in the way that I think they should, and the easing of it all, then they're all idiots and I've got no time for them. It's just easy. And it's like not very imaginative either. It's harder to stand in the uneven shifting sand of middle ground, isn't it? Like, it's hard to acknowledge, I think, that people with racist views may be good people in many other areas of their life, but shaped negatively in that area, you know? It's hard to stand against racist policing whilst realising that not all police are racist. Like, it's hard to celebrate the government for having had to manage a crisis that they had no idea how to deal with, whilst acknowledging that they probably have made massive errors. Like, it's hard to see why someone might want Brexit when you don't. It's hard to respect that view, to respect another way of seeing the world, you know? I think we find that really, really tricky. And it is hard, because it sort of sounds like we're saying things don't matter, doesn't it? But we're not. We're just attempting to be more open and more creative and to see maybe with a fuller vision. Like, if you look back at history, is it possible that Martin Luther King Jr. was such a force for justice and beauty and reconciliation, but also to acknowledge that as a husband he was rubbish and he was unfaithful? Like, does that mean that all he did for equality is out the window? No, of course it doesn't. People are flawed. Like, is it possible that although Edward Colston was a member of the Royal African Company and profited massively from slavery, which is abhorrent and of course we hate it, is it possible that he could have been a force for good in other areas? Of course it is. Of course it is. Because people aren't just one or the other, are they? People are this whole amazing, toxic, beautiful, damaged combination of qualities and personality. And so are we. Like, is it possible that you and me, that we are just deeply flawed and biased, and that we have unrecognisable prejudices? We're prone to following the crowd, but also we're beautiful and a force for good in so many areas. Like, that's truth. And the middle shifting sand position is just a really uncomfortable position, isn't it? Maybe it's a place where we need to allow ourselves to be fully known, you know, for all of our flaws. But I'm not convinced that we live in a society where that's allowed, you know? Like, people are hung out to dry for statements they made in the past, for mistakes that they did years ago. It's like we're always looking for someone to blame and a way to tear someone down, when actually people are human and they say the wrong thing. They make ignorant statements, like, we make judgmental comments, like we do. We're people, we get it wrong, you know? And I think we just have to start by looking at ourselves and acknowledging that, and then taking that out to other people. See, like, the Jesus path has these two massive statements. It has this one statement that encompasses everything. It's about, like, love God with your whole being and love everybody else as you would love to be treated. Now, you may not believe in God, and I get that, but this statement is about reorientating yourself, like having a point of reference in the sinking sand as such. It's like when we look to God, we look outside of ourselves at a point of goodness and life and the source of life, and it makes us acknowledge our limitations, It makes us realise that how we look on Instagram isn't everything, It's like how we appear to other people, and our thoughts and our little world and our bugbears are just not everything. In loving God, love being an action, like a point of reference, a way of life. So in connecting with that, I guess we have our mind transformed, we have a point of reference that allows us to try and love the rest of the world better. It like sets us in the right viewpoint. And that includes people that we hate. Yeah. It isn't easy to love some people. Yeah. And it's easy to love other people, isn't it? Like some people we naturally connect with, we see the world in the same way, we laugh at the same thing, we follow the same YouTubers, we share the same politics, like we just connect, we like the same fashion, we like to do the same things. Like it's easy with some people, isn't it? But really, like what reward is there in that? You're just liking someone who's easy to like. You're loving someone who's easy to love. Like, woohoo, well done you. Like, I can think I'm really great because I have these people that I love. But actually, I tend to love them because they're easy to love. Or I guess it's about reorientating ourselves to God to see that we're called to love everybody. We're called to love our neighbour. And who is our neighbour? Like our neighbour is the person who doesn't get you. Your neighbour is the person who rubs up against you the wrong way, who has views that make your skin crawl, who wants Brexit when you don't, who supports Tory when you're Labour, who has racist views that need challenging, who likes Trump, who doesn't get your TikTok video or doesn't like the same comedy as you. You know what, that person is your neighbour. And the Jesus path isn't this path of easiness. It calls us to love God, to reorientate ourselves so that we can love our neighbour. And like, I'm being both really flippant and serious because I guess that's the challenge, isn't it? It's like in the big and in the small. It's the sibling that winds you up, the parent that has let you down, the cousin that judges you, the colleague who's toxic, the politician who's an idiot. Because life's tough, isn't it? And I'm not any expert at this. I'm not claiming that I'm any expert at this. I'm just putting it out there to the world, I guess. But in a world where every other meme says, if you're bad for me, I'm going to cut you off. Like, consider what Jesus says is like the way to a new world order, isn't it? It's like it doesn't sit in the extremes. It sits in the mess of life in the middle ground. And it calls us to do the same as well, I think. It calls us to look at how we're both broken and beautiful. And it calls us to see how other people are broken and beautiful, and not to just get on the next bandwagon, the next, like, we're going to slate all of these people now, because it's like, it calls us to be more creative and more understanding, Like when you love God with your whole heart and your whole mind, or when you just start that, like, what does it even mean to do that in a whole way? But when you start to reorientate yourself towards the divine, when you start to see that you have limits and that you're broken and that you need help, when you start to see that you need forgiveness and a way out, when you start to understand that about God wanting to empower you and change you, I think it sits you in a position where you can start to see other people differently, where you can see the brokenness behind the pain, where you can see the damage behind the racist view, where you can see the frustration behind the brutality. And it's not saying it's okay. It's never saying it's okay. But it calls us into the mess of that middle ground. It calls us to maybe understand why that person treats you that way, why that person has that view. Like, no one's in a vacuum, are they? None of us are. We're all shaped by our experiences, by pressures, and by the stupid things that we choose to follow and give attention to. Like, if you give attention to the negative stuff, it grows, doesn't it? And so I think in calling this, like, the one where I hate you, I think the Jesus path calls us to just a more creative position. It's so easy to stand in an extreme, you know. It's so easy to wish that everybody else would be what you need them to be. It's so easy to judge everybody else and condemn them and decide that they're rubbish, and to decide you're going to cut them out of your life because they're toxic. Like, why are they toxic? Like, what's happened to them? Like, some people you may need to cut out, that's fine. But life isn't about it all being kosher for me and making it as comfortable as possible. In the Jesus path, it's like we're called to love God and love our neighbour. And our neighbour are our friends and our enemies. And I don't think it's easy. I haven't got it right. I don't know the answer. But I think there's something about being creative in how we think about it, you know. And about acknowledging that it's not possible to love your enemies unless you first look to God. Do you know what I mean? Like, that might sound vague, but it's not possible to love people without first connecting with the source of love. Yeah? And so if you want to learn to love and understand and grow, then first we have to connect with the God who loves and understands and is all about change and freedom. Yeah. So may you know today, as you try to move from the comfortable extreme to the messiness of the middle ground, where it's not easy, where we have to acknowledge that both good and bad live like interconnected really in ourselves and other people. May you know what it means to turn to the divine, to turn to God and want to shape us. And may we, in light of that, be people that can stand in the middle ground and learn what it means to love ourselves and our friends and our enemies. God forgive us when we're people that jump on the next bandwagon, on the next moral panic, on the next thing where we instead, God, may you hold us as we are honest about ourselves and honest about other people and the world that we're in. That's my thought for today. I will be back on Friday at 10:30ish, and I just want to say to you, if like the whole concept of God and faith and just connecting with the divine is something that you're interested in, like, do keep listening, do explore. We can talk more about that if you would like to. I know it's like maybe a bit of a bizarre concept for some of you, but trying to do life without connecting with the source of life is hard. Life's hard enough anyway, so what you got to lose? Maybe let's try and connect. So I will be back on Friday. Take care, everyone. Bye.